Why hasn't evolution dealt with inherited conditions like Huntington's disease? A lot of these things don't have much impact until after most people would have bred, so evolution doesn't give a shit. I mean, evolution doesn't give a shit anyway, but more so in those cases. Genes for those may help in some other way, if you don't get too many. Evolution is good enough, not maximizing. If it works well enough to breed, that will do. There is little genetic diversity in humans, so that can do funny things. Maybe those genes were just lucky. Another funny one is male baldness. Most people have already had children by the time they lose their hair, so the gene continues to be passed on even if in an alternate reality it might have been selected against if it manifested earlier in life. Evolution isn't intelligent, it's random. Diseases like that aren't widespread enough to cause a major shift at birth rates for those who develop an immunity to the disease. There is no such thing as immunity to a genetic disease. Well, in the case of Huntington's disease, the symptoms often don't show up until the person is in their 30s and 40s, so usually after they've already had children, and in the past we didn't understand it was genetic either. To deal with something, the problem has to lower your chance of reproducing. It's that simple. To look at it another way, consider the opposite. A genetic trait that kills you even if you only have one copy of it, heterozygous, before you turn 10 is very unlikely to ever get a foothold in the population because who exactly is going to be alive to pass it on? Evolution doesn't seek perfection. It literally just goes for whatever you lived long enough to reproduce. Explanation for the Persistence of Huntington's by Stanford professor Robert Sapolsky. I recommend watching the full lecture, it's fascinating. Natural selection is survivor bias, not an inherent property of biological systems/life. The common view of evolution, that it's a determinant system which chooses traits, is as ridiculous as intelligent design. Because there's no such thing as intelligent design. Evolution doesn't care. Evolution is a result, not the cause. People have kids. People die a little young, but their kids live to grow up and have kids. And die a little young. I know a family. They had 4 sons, and finally had a daughter. Of all those children, only the oldest son inherited some bizarre trick of the genes that killed his 2 daughters when they were little girls. His son found out he'd inherited the same thing, and decided to never have children. He married a woman who also had decided to never have children. They have dogs, and are very happy together. 4 sons, and only one inherited the gene. The wanted daughter happened not to have the gene, and thus lived to have children. Evolution is a numbers game. It's the reason for be fruitful and multiply. Not because we need all those people, but because so many die. Evolution is driven by the survival of entire populations against environmental stressors around them. Those stressors cull from the bottom. It's the weakest that die from disease, or the slowest that get eaten by the lion, the dumbest that grab the poisonous snake, etc. There's plenty of dumb people who aren't quite dumb enough to grab a random snake and hope like hell it's not poisonous, so the tribe is going to be filled with dumb people who just weren't dumb enough to die before they had kids. Repeat that with slow and weak, and you start to get the drift. Even deleterious effects can get passed on if you survive them long enough to procreate, or your relatives pass on your genes because they aren't quite as bad off as you are. Until X disease stops your entire bloodline in the tracks, there's all kinds of didn't quite die quickly enough to stop them from procreating moments. Huntington's tends to have a late onset, meaning it does not prevent people from passing it on to the next generation. My dad and grandma haven't had Huntington's respectively. I've been tested and I don't, thankfully. So my kids now won't get it either. In our family it hasn't gotten worse every generation. Also, we have late onset in our family. My grandmother lived to 86 and my dad is still alive at 85. They both have been part of several research studies with new protocol. I think people forget this ability to test genes is still very new science, still not available worldwide. It takes forever for traits to disappear naturally. Gene identification is going to speed that up, of course. Just not overnight. Nature only cares about offspring surviving until reproductive age. That's why we have really poor defenses against age-related diseases in general. As far as nature is concerned, once we've had offspring, we're good to die. There's only selective pressure to fix diseases that impact chances of reproduction. Quote, that seemingly get worse after each generation? That's evolution working. Evolution doesn't change the individual, it changes the species through elimination of what doesn't work. As long as people with Huntington's produce offspring, it will never go away. It goes away when all the people that are subject to it no longer have offspring and die off. If it doesn't stop you from breeding, then it won't be breed out. Other diseases, like sickle cell, have benefits to certain genotypes but have the downside that some draw the short straw. Ever heard a person say one of their parents has Huntington's disease?